Okay, so I did a few videos, first of all on updating my PC with a new late model motherboard and the problems I encountered with that with an AMD processor. But then I wanted to install Linux and I had problems doing that. But finally, at the end of the last video I thought I got MX Linux installed on it, but as soon as I finished the video, I found out that I couldn't boot anymore. There was problems and it was hanging on boot and stuff. And some of the distros, like I put in my USB memory stick with like Fedora on there. I wanted to try that out, and it wouldn't even boot at all. It would just be stuck. And some of the other distros, I noticed that they would spend a long time complaining about USB hubs and things not working and not coming back with the right information and so on, which I kind of ignored. But then I started thinking perhaps there is a problem with some of the USB ports in my PC. That's why it wasn't working. And sure enough, I had a third party board plugged into my PC, which you see a picture of it here in Attack or something. And that thing is either totally not compatible with Linux, but I suspect it may have other problems. It was relatively cheap, I guess, and even in Windows, I think I occasionally had problems with those USB ports, had to replug things in or change things over. As soon as I removed that board from my PC, all the distros started to work, and it was no longer complaining about these particular USB ports not working and stuff like that. So that's where we were at. So then I started to have a look at which distros I could actually then use for my requirements. And as a recap, these requirements is what I was looking for. So in my Linux distro, and I wasn't completely, but that MX Linux, for instance, wasn't giving me Wayland, which was a problem. So I wanted to make sure that we had OBS Studio, VirtualBox, so that I could run my VSDC video editor in it, since it's Windows only. Brave browser, Visual Studio Code, an official version that can run Platform IO. There's a few versions out there, I think they're called Codium and so on, that will not work. FreeOffice instead of LibreOffice, this is my preference. And I wanted to make sure that the particular distro that I used is as much GUI based as possible, including a package manager. There's a few out there that do not have that facility, and you can only install software through the terminal. And it has to have support for Flatpaks. So we need to work with multiple monitors that have various resolutions, and that means we need Wayland support, because you can't set the different resolutions on the various monitors, only a global resolution. So also must be able to either or both RPM or deb packages. So deb packages, of course, are supported by anything that is based on Debian. That includes Linux Mint and Ubuntu and MX Linux, for instance. And RPM, they can usually be loaded by SUSE Linux and Fedora. It's a Red Hat thing. So I then decided to try out the Fedora with KDE Plasma, and that actually worked, but I didn't like, there was some shortcomings there in the actual GUI that it has. And then I started looking around what else is based on Fedora or that I can use. And so what I found was Ultramarine Linux. And it may not be totally perfect, but it runs everything that I need, and it runs faultlessly on my machine with Wayland, which is a new graphical UI software, and as you can see, it's based on Fedora, so it can use those RPM packages if I need to. And well, and it, like it just says there, it just works. And I have tried it out, and it seems to work quite nicely. Took a little bit of work to get all the software installed and to get everything working. And there's just one little thing I'm still looking at, but I should be able to solve that as well. So let's have a look at it. As you can see, this is just a review here. I have multiple monitors. That particular one is actually a touch monitor, and as you can see, it works fine in Linux. It's an Asus ZenScreen, and there is my main monitor, which I have sitting to the side of my bench, and then I have a bigger monitor there, a 4K one, which I use for the microscope. Okay, so I have OBS Studio actually running on Ultramarine Linux. I'm recording this using it, so we'll see how that turns out. So first of all, if I go to the info section, you will see that I have KDE Plasma version 6.34, KDE Framework 6.13, Qt version 6.82, kernel 6.14. Looks like there was an update yesterday. It was 6.13. They've already updated it to the latest kernel, which is great. And we've got the graphics platform Wayland, and everything is working perfectly using the Fedora background, obviously. And the only other distros I've tried so far, they have not actually been able to get Wayland to work on my machine anyway, using the, as you can see, the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3050 board, and it's got the NVIDIA drivers running, which means that OBS Studio recognized that, and it's using hardware compression and so on. And we have 62 gigabytes of RAM, and we have well, we have 12 cores, but we have 24 processors it's exposing, which is what we need in order to get VirtualBox to work. There is also, let me see now. Oh, that's on a different board. There's all sorts of information over here that you can, like a system monitor. And that kind of fits a similar thing as to what the task manager in Windows does. And you can look at various services and so on, USB devices, and all sorts of stuff. Quite useful. Vulkan is the driver, I think, for the NVIDIA. Yeah. So in any case, everything is working, so I'm not too concerned about all that stuff. I'm not really a Linux expert anyway, so a lot of stuff I still need to learn about. Display configuration. Okay, so this is the display configuration, and as you can see, when you're using Wayland, you have many more settings available. You have much more control. This is what we needed because we got 3 monitors, a 4K one, Hewlett Packard 9020 by 1200, and this little Asus one is the touchscreen, which is 1920 by 1080. And as you can see, the scaling over here is 100% on that one, it's 100% on that one, but it is 150% on the 4K monitor. You can't do this when you have the X11 system. You don't have as many settings, and you just can't, you only have global scaling. And also, this particular version here, and I think it came from the Fedora backend, it has touchscreen support, and you can select which one of the monitors is a touchscreen. On the other distros, even if they say they got Wayland, you only get this thing here, which you can actually you can trigger something if you're touching the screen and do something, but I don't deal with that. So everything is good. Lots of settings over here that you can play with. And I have all the software loaded that I needed. I have FreeOffice text maker loaded and all the software that I needed. I have found either most of it is in Flatpaks or in the repository, which is this thing over here. It's called Discover. You can look at installed and see if there's any updates and there are settings and so on. And so if I go to installed, you can see that I've been able, because a lot of that stuff is automatically installed by applications. I got my Brave browser, BleachBit for deleting junk files, and so on. Firefox came with it. This firewall thing I don't really need. I might uninstall that, but it's still sitting there right now. GIMP, and so on and so on. Everything was there, everything worked. Okay, so the last thing that I needed was the VirtualBox, Oracle VirtualBox. And there it is. As you can see, I've got Windows 10 loaded on it. Call it WinX. Windows 10, given it 32 gigabytes of RAM and 8 processors out of the 24 that are available. Has 12 cores, you know, the AMD 7900, and which means that it looks like it has 24 processors to the system. So, but 8 appears to be plenty. And 32 gigs of RAM out of the 64, 256 megabytes of video memory, and so on and so on. The rest doesn't really matter for what I'm using it for. And so I can say start. Okay, so there it is. Now I should be able to run the video editor. It's a Windows only thing, so that's why I'm running it in a VirtualBox. And there it is. I have already tested it, so it works just fine. I'm not going to actually run it right now. So that was another requirement that I had, and that's working fine. And I can say I can run it full screen as well. There is full screen, seamless mode, scaled mode, just window size, and so on and so on. Has all the features. Power, shutdown. Now I installed Windows 10, but I've turned almost everything off to make it smaller. The telemetry, everything is gone out of there. So, and I'm never planning to use Windows 11. This is good enough. I have. Let me get rid of this. I have actually installed. I think it comes. Does it come under multimedia? Yeah. I've installed Shotcut and OpenShot video editor. I haven't even looked at these two. If these two fit the bill for me, then I won't even have to use the VSDC anymore in the VirtualBox. In any case, so far so good. Solved the problem by removing that USB card. I bought a new one, which is actually faster and better. And it does work with Linux. It doesn't complain about it. So I am in business, I believe. So that's all I've got. I just wanted to do a little update there to show all the various hurdles that you have to jump. I first had to get this AMD motherboard going, and we found out in the first video that you can't actually run it at full speed because it does a memory training each time you boot it, and it takes a long time, and it won't even restart. So I set the speed to 5200s, even though the memory is actually Expo and 6000. But if you run it at that, it just doesn't work. And this is not the only motherboard. This is an Asus ProArt. I had an MSI motherboard that had exactly the same feature, so I'm not sure how that all comes about, but there's problems. But now at 5200, it's running perfectly good. You can hardly change it. Find a difference anyway, being speed. Anyway, that's all I got. As I said, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys later.